Before we talk about clipping masks, one important thing that I forgot to mention, let's go ahead and have a colorful square and then these 3 colors with a mask. Let's make a mask on that. Whee! Boop. And then press the button right here to add a layer mask. Bam. So we've got this layer mask attached. Notice when I move these around, they move together, they move in sequence, which is great. But if I don't want that to happen, they are linked. And notice that this little thing indicates layer mask is linked to layer. It's the little chain icon. If I click it, they're no longer linked. So if I move this around, the layer itself, the mask stays put. If I move the mask around now, the layer stays put. Pretty neat. So that's going to be important in a minute. That has to do with what layer masks are. Let's say I have a black background and a colorful square and a blob of goop. Let's take a brush. I can't see the blob of goop because I have it on the bottom. Just have a blob of goop. And I can make this any color I want. Doesn't really matter. It's just a big old blob of goop. What matters about it is that some of the layers, some of the pixels on the layer are transparent and some are not. So you can see that I have different levels of opacity or transparency on it. If I were to create a clipping mask, I'm going to move this down, and let's name this blob something. I'm going to call it clipping mask. If I were to create a clipping mask, what I can do is use this layer this entire layer as a mask. So let me show you what that means. Under Layer, Create Clipping Mask, boom. Nothing appears to happen. Well, what's going on? Well, it clipped down instead of what I expected. And that's because I had the wrong layer selected. If I select the topmost layer, it will create a clipping mask out of the layer below it. So keep that in mind. Layer, Create Clipping Mask, boom. Oh, interesting. What's going on here? If I take my move tool and make sure that I have auto select off, because auto select will get you every time. Oh, it's the colorful square layer. I can see it. But now I've got this clipping mask layer, even though it's made out of stuff. So it's as though the pixels are being treated as a mask itself. That's all clipping mask is. That said, you can release this clipping mask as well if you click up and go up to Layer, Release Clipping Mask. Voila. That said, there's a faster way to get there that makes more sense. Hold down the Alt key, and that's Option for Macintosh. Hold down the Alt key, and when you go between the layers, you'll see this icon. That's the Create Clipping Mask icon. Let go of the Alt key, and it just disappears as normal hand. Hold down the Alt key, boom, you've got it. You may have to wiggle your mouse around a little bit to find it. I click, bam, clipping mask created. Beautiful. And just to demonstrate, I'm going to turn off the black background. There's nothing going on below it. So how do you think about this? How does this go? If you think about the layers as a waterfall coming off, then everything below it, or the water, will be collected by whatever's below it, and then just fall away past that. That's what's going on in this. It just disappears. That tends to confuse people. I'll say it one other way. If you hold out your hand and you pour sand onto your hand catches it. Everything else just falls away. Imagine the layer at the top as the sand and the clipping mask layer as your hand. You're just catching it. Everything else you just don't see. All right, so what's the point, really? You just basically move things apart. Well, there are a couple of things going on. Let's say that something is a little more complicated. Notice that we still have the original colors, so I could bring in some of them. What if I had my 3-color icon? Hi, 3-color icon. Can I add this to the stack of clipping masks? Yes, I can. I'll then Alt and click, boom, it's part of it. The other way to do it, if I drag out and then drag in, the clipping mask will be added in. What do I mean by out and in? I mean, notice that over here, it's not indented, but if I squeeze it between it, it will be indented. That's in. If I pull it out, in other words, it's no longer indented, it's literally out. So these two blobs of color are now being clipped down to what's below it. Now we'll get into smart objects later that allows you to use more clipping masks on top of each other. But none of this answers the question, what is the point? This just seems like a more complicated way to do what we were doing before. The point has to do with editability. So one more time, we've got that blob, right? But what if we weren't clipping to a blob? Hold down the Alt key, Alt key, and click between these guys. Boom, they're released. So we've got our normal layers back. Everything is a layer now. What if we had something cooler like text? Let's pick a color, let's say yellow. And we put, hello, MJC. And it's really tiny. So I Control T to transform. I make it nice and big. Hi, MJC. Well, now you're thinking, wait, if you just clip to that blob and the layer has to be over the other layer, nothing in between, or it won't clip properly, as it just disappears. It clips below to it, and there's an invisible layer between it. So if you just clip to the blob, bam, it's this about what you expect. You just have it go again. That's boring, right? What's the point of that? Well, let me pull this out. What if you clip the other way? Oh, now the blob is coloring the hello MJC. Splash. Look at that. We have some cool kind of spray paint effect going on inside of our text. But there's more. Remember how we can add in objects? If I alt click, boom, I can change the ordering here. Now I have a rainbow text and I have some spray paint going over it. And all this is still editable. So what if I wanted hello MJC to be in a different font? I'd take my text, I'd click on hello MJC, double click to highlight everything, and then I could pick, instead of impact, I could pick, oh, I don't know, let's do ink free. Hello MJC. Ta-da! I can still edit everything. What if I wanted a different opacity on the colorful square? It's not a problem. Opacity is separate from everything else. So now I have more yellow from the hello MJC showing up. What if I wanted to make this more legible by shrinking the font? Control T, Shift Alt to do it from the middle. Boom. Hello MJC. What if I was happy with it and I wanted this thing? Well, I could merge it all down and apply it. I could also merge it all up. There's a command I'm going to be using frequently. If you click on the flyout menu on layers, you'll see the flatten visible or merge visible option in here somewhere. Merge visible, which is Shift Control E. There is a command that they're missing. If you throw Alt into the mix and use Control Alt Shift E, it will actually duplicate it. So I'm going to turn off the black background for a second. Click the topmost layer, do Control Alt Shift E. Boom. I turn all these off. This is now just generated off of what we made, which still exists. I turn on the background there. Turn on these guys. Ta-da, it's the same thing. One of them now, though, is just a uneditable set of pixels. So if I were to transform it and really blow it up, you'd see the distortion. It's no longer text. It's no longer vector. It's now just calculations going on. And it will try to smooth that out, but it will still be rough if we go in. All right. But that's pretty cool. How I did that again was Control Alt Shift E. There are a million other ways to do it. I'll be doing it throughout the semester. I'll just call this flat text. And that is the clipping mask. And they're very, very useful for effects, for the black-white icon, the adjustment layers. Don't know why I got stuck on that for a second. For text, for anything that you want to edit. They have a crazy number of uses, and it's absolutely amazing. We're going to be using a lot of those throughout the semester. So that is your clipping mask.